because one of the topics that we've spoken about and did a report on is a phrase, medical futility, which encompasses those situations where there's a difference of opinion on whether to stop therapeutic treatments and go to comfort care or palliative care, or whether to keep going and going and going. And a number of those stories were really compelling, you know, because you've got people who are very, very ill, and the question is, can the medical community do more? And unfortunately, with the technologies, the answer is often, well, we can always do more. So how do you know when to stop? And that ethical kind of conflict of not only when do you stop, but when are family members and or clinicians ready to stop, because they get invested in a good outcome. And so on a personal level, 30 plus years ago, my last year of law school, I was pregnant and delivered a little one 2 days after my graduation. And he was delivered knowing that there might be potential problems because I was getting sick, and it was because the amniotic fluid wasn't being swallowed and processed by the baby. And what they were concerned about was sort of his GI system. And so he was taken by cesarean section at Brigham and Women's and whisked to Children's, knowing that there were probably issues. And there were. He had what's called a TE fistula, which is a gap in his esophagus, which can be fixed, but even now it's a very challenging medical diagnosis. But the other compounding thing was he only had one lung develop. And so he would seize and they would resuscitate him. But over time, it meant that his cortical function he lost. So he became blind, he became deaf, and eventually he lost all of his cortical function. But we kept going. He was in the intensive care unit. He never left the intensive care unit for 9.5 months, which is a long time. And he eventually died. We had a meeting with the staff every week. And this one meeting, they said, we've checked with legal, and you can withdraw life support whenever you're ready. And we knew Christine Mitchell, as Providence would have it, and so she gave us a number of articles. Ethics was in its very baby stages back then in the early 80s. And so we read all of these articles, written primarily by Jesuits, interestingly, at Georgetown, and wrestled with what were we supposed to do. Because you come to a point as a parent of realizing there's no safe haven. Whatever you decide is a decision. You know, it's not like you can say, I'm not going to do anything, because that's a decision in itself, and that would have, we needed to own that as well. So our meeting with the medical staff was on Tuesday. We did all of our research and met with our pastor on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, when I was at work in the courts, got a phone call saying they were having trouble resuscitating him. And my husband was there already. And so when I came in, they disconnected him. So, so as you can imagine, that's a kind of immersion into medical ethics. We faced, besides the end of life and whether we had gone too far and medical futility, there were two other things that were going on that we didn't realize. One was a phrase called conscientious objection, where caregivers can say, I don't feel right about the care that we're giving, and so don't put me on that rotation. And so by the end, there were nurses who asked not to care for him because they felt that we were doing too much. And the other thing that we faced was the finances. Because I had been in law school, I had a law school policy, my husband and I, and back then they structured it so that you would write a check for a dependent. And so within the time frame, we wrote the check and they accepted it. And then they refused all coverage based on a pre-existing condition in the home. So we dealt with the financial, decisions about what the cost was for multiple surgeries and interventions, and so that was my baptism by fire in ethics.